Hey, Nikki here with Beauty J'adore with another sewing tutorial. And this is the Shimere bucket bag by Sew Moded Bee. Now this isn't my pattern, but it is a really good, easy pattern. It's great for beginners as well. But the reason I'm doing the tutorial on this bag is because they may have one, I'm not sure. But I got a lot of requests after I made this one for the instructions on doing the hack that I did. And I love it. It's such a good bag. You can see it up close. It's so good. It's so good. So what I do, because if you look at the video, it looks pretty long, but a lot of that is kind of going through some of the tools that you'll need, some of the tools you need now and what you could use in the future as well for other projects. The sewing machine, just some kind of tips and tricks that I use in terms of making bags. But if you want to skip through all that, you can and just kind of get to the sewing. Now with this bag, this is a mini bag. So when you print the pattern out, the pattern is going to be mini. But what I suggest you do is you have it scaled up to 150% prior to printing out. Because this bag is very small. Like it's literally like one of the tiny bucket bags. Compared to this one, it's like significantly bigger. And I show you what I did in order to change the pattern around. I didn't add any pieces. I just used the pattern that was there and changed that pattern around. So I did take you step by step in terms of what I did with that. And I think that is it. Like everything that you need, I'm going to go through that kind of early on so that you know. But just like FYI, whatever hardware you want to use for a bag, lots of D-rings. Always keep D-rings on hand, as well as grommets, leather. So there's two different ways, because I've made this bag before. And so this leather is like a really like sturdy, hard leather, stands up on its own. Like it's that girl, it really is. And then I have another one that I'm using for the tutorial. It's very soft. You can use a regular sewing machine to sew it. Still cute, but just a very different vibe. In order to sew this, you will need like a heavy duty sewing machine. But for the other one, you can definitely, it's all going to depend on what type of fabric that you use. So I go through all that, and hopefully I'll try to tag like where you can get the tools. When I talk about that, where are the sewing machines, when I'm talking about that, altering the pattern, where I'm talking, that way you can kind of like skip through, as well as kind of just getting to the actual sewing of the pattern. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Happy sewing. Okay, so I'm going to kind of run through the actual pattern pieces and the changes that I made. So let me move this to the side. Okay, so this is basically the front and the back of the actual pattern, but it's also increased by 150%. So the original pattern, of course, is smaller. So all the pattern pieces were increased by 150%. But what I did was, at 150%, it is actually 2 inches, 2 inches wider. So I made it 2 inches smaller. I hope that wasn't confusing because it probably kind of sounded confusing. But anyway, at 150%, it would look like this, but also 2 inches wider. There you have it. So if you kind of look at the dimensions here, just think 2 inches wider at 150%. But anyway, so as is, the way it comes out when you print it, is significantly smaller. So we have the pattern and we have lots of tools, and I will go over all of these things as well and give you some alternatives for the tools. And it's really important that if you want the bag to like have a really kind of luxe professional look, that you invest in some of the tools. All of them, not necessary, but some of them I definitely would. All right, so let's get into the pattern first. So like I said before, this pattern was increased to 150%. So the pattern that you purchase is going to be a lot smaller. And again, you can get it at, I believe it's So Moted B, SEWMOTEITBE.com. So Moted B. And I think she's on Instagram and TikTok as well. So again, this is not my pattern. This is someone else's pattern. And I really like it. It's a really good, easy pattern to do. And then you can make it a lot more special or kind of put your own spin on it. So if you are very new, like zero experience when it comes to making bags, this is a fantastic place to start. All right, so let's go into the changes that I made. So when you get the pattern and you print it out and you tile it together, I'm going to move this over. This is going to be the bottom, well, the bottom and the front and the back. So essentially like this. But in addition to that, this piece here will also be attached. This piece, we're going to fold this here. So once you tile it together, sorry, these cats are over here fighting, and you print it out, it's going to be like this. So this is going to be the height for the front and back. Here's the bottom. I hope that makes sense. Also, keep in mind, I decreased the width by 2 inches. So in addition to it being this size, it's also going to be 2 inches wider. A lot of it for me was based on, and the decision to decrease it was based on the amount of leather that I had. So nothing else. You know, when I make it different times, you know, it's probably going to be different dimensions because of the fact that I'll probably have more leather. But anyway, so this is what it will look like, the front and the back. So I'll tell you what I did. Again, I increased it by 150%. They're going to be these lines. I call them the cutting lines. But you're not going to need them if you're doing the regular pattern. But I just took at this line and I cut the back and the front piece off. So again, it was like this. I cut it off because what I wanted to do is create kind of just a different, and I'll show you here. So this part here is the bottom. And then we have this part that I took off for the top, for this part here, for like the jute. And I cut this part off, but I also added 3 more inches. So this makes it a total of 6 inches. Just this part up here was just 3 inches. So it's a total of 6 inches. So we have this part here, which is this. This is the bottom. And I'll go over the changes that I made to the bottom as well. And then this part, 6 inches. And then we get to this part up here, which is, with the seam allowance is like 2 inches. So in addition, we're going to have this other piece at the top that's 2 inches. So you can just simply cut out another sheet of paper and kind of do 2 inches, and it's the same width. So you have this piece, then you have this piece here, which is the 6 inches. And then on top of that, you're going to do another piece, which is 2 inches. So you have this here, 6 inches, and then 2 inches. And so the good thing about it is that the front and the back is going to be exactly the same. So we'll go ahead and set this to the side. Another piece inside is going to be the lining. So because I made the actual bag pattern larger, you're also going to need to make sure you make the lining larger as well, which I did that. So you want to kind of put it on here. And so keep in mind, this is going to be the full lining. So if you see here, you can see how that's lined, and it's like the entire inside is going to be this lining bag that's going to connect to the top here. So you have to make sure, so we have this, and we'll lay this out. So we have this piece, then we have this, and this. And this is going to be as wide as, or as long as the bag is going to be, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. But then you have to make sure your lining is going to be long enough, leaving, so this is going to connect to the top. And there's going to be about 1.5 inches left here. That's 2 inches on this side. 2 inches here and 1.5 inches here. So you're just going to have to make sure it's connected here, or it's going to match up to the top, and 1.5 inches left at the bottom. So that is, and also I decreased the width 2 inches. So for all the pieces, you're going to have to decrease, if you decide to increase it and you want to kind of change the dimensions. What I'm working on is 2 inches smaller. So with 2 inches smaller, this is the size, which is pretty big. It's a pretty big bag. And I'll get the exact dimensions, but it's a pretty large bag. And that is with 2 inches removed from the width. So again, like I've always said with patterns, just make them your own. You know, if you want it significantly smaller, if you want to do these exact pattern alterations or the exact alterations that I made to the bag in a smaller version, you can do that as well. So there you have it. So this pattern, I'm assuming, because I didn't really look at the instructions when I made it, but what I'm doing and what I'm thinking the pattern calls for is, because this is the lining, this piece here that's cut out is for the zipper. And for this lining, you'll need 2 pieces of this lining, which would mean you have 2 zippers. I'm only going to do 1 zipper. So when I cut my lining out, I'm only going to cut this one side. I'm going to cut both sides, 2 pieces of this, but only on one side am I going to leave an opening for the zipper. So my zipper, of course, you may have to adjust this a bit, but my zipper is going to fit in perfectly. It's going to have a lot of excess, but keep in mind when you're altering the pattern that you're also altering it in a way that is comfortable for you. So if you like a longer zipper pouch, if you like 2 zipper openings in the insides of your bags, just take it upon yourself. Make those pattern alterations yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that to the side. I think this is the only piece. You have here the pocket. So the original pattern, I do remember, it calls for 2 of these to basically encase, probably to encase the pocket. Of course, I'm only going to need 1. So 1, and this is a lining fabric. Now, I'll go over the fabric that I'm using in a second, and the reason that I'm using it. But yeah, so this will be the lining fabric that you're going to need for the pocket. And so you'll also need a stabilizer for the bottom of the bag. I believe the pattern says, what is this? Decoville Heavy. I'm not familiar with what Decoville Heavy is. I'm assuming it's a stabilizer. And you know what? I think, if I'm not mistaken, it is a stabilizer that, I think it's a fusible stabilizer. But I'm using this one, which is Texan. It is very thick. It's very thick. So the one that I used for this one is not as thick. In fact, it's not even a stabilizer. Let me show you. I used this, which is a leather. It's a very unfinished, and it's not really thick, but the reason I didn't need that is because this fabric is very thick. It's very sturdy. There's a lot of structure to this, so it wasn't as important, but nonetheless, I used that. Now, there's another piece that I created for the bottom, just because I like the way it looks. So the actual pattern, I think, calls for like 4 bag feet. And I'll go over what I used because the bag feet that I have, I wasn't in love with them for it. They just seemed a bit more gaudy, and I wanted something that was more flush. So the bottom of the bag, the way the pattern calls is this part here is not on there, and it's just 4 bag feet. So what I did was I created another piece of leather that I'm going to put on here, and then I'm going to use these screw in like little rivets. And I prefer using these as opposed to the normal ones. Let me show you. It's like these. Either these rivets or the actual feet. Because like I said, I don't know. I think the ones that are more flush, depending on what you feel like in your style, and what you have available. So I love working with these only because they're a lot easier to install. Once you make the hole, all you have to do is screw them in, and they just look good. They're nice, and they're brass, and they have some weight to them, and I really like them. So I'm not going to go yet into detail in reference to like what hardware I'm going to put on the bag, because I typically don't know that until I get further into making the bag, because I tend to change my mind a lot as I go through this process. So I may want to make it the same way, and I don't know, once I kind of work myself through the process, I may want to do something different. And I'm working with a very limited amount of leather. So you've probably seen this leather lots of times. And so I'm literally on the last pieces of leather. So that's all you'll need. I think a handle. I think that pattern, you know what, let me look at it. It calls for a handle, the actual, but I don't know if it comes with it. I know it doesn't come in the pattern. Maybe you have to either buy one or create one. Let's see. I think you need to buy one, if I'm not mistaken, because there's no pattern for it in here. So yeah, probably you need to buy one. But I created a handle. I think it's just like 26 inches. And this one is just, the leather is really nice and thick. And so I just created one myself. So if you have extra fabric, you can go ahead and I'll show you how to do that. Or you can buy one, either or. So let's also get into, I think, the tools that you'll need. All right. So I think I'm going to use these D-rings again. And I used these D-rings. And these are like really nice thick D-rings that I use here. They're so pretty. And these are, they're kind of mediocre. I won't say that. They're brass, but they're just not as good of a quality as these. So I'm still on the fence. So I may just make it with these and then just wait till the other ones that I ordered arrive, which they're supposed to arrive on Monday, and then just switch them out. But we'll see. So of course I told you about these screw-in rivets, which I really like these. You simply make the hole using an awl or some type of other way that you can pierce the leather. You pop these in and then you screw them. And they're just so much nicer, so much easier to work with. I love these things. I really do. So we're going to need some of these. And I will tag all the tools like in the comments of this video so that you can see where I get them. And I'll also make sure I tag like the places that you can get them with the best pricing and the better quality. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Sellrite, but I'll briefly go over that. And that is where I got my sewing machine, which I only use for like leather or thicker applications. But they also have things like this and D-rings that are like really good quality. And the price is really good too. And I think people are kind of shocked at that and don't really know too much about it. But Sellrite has really good hardware. Now, of course, Sellrite is a company that was designed for like this to have machines that fix the sails of boats and stuff like that. But so they're not going to have like a lot of the cool bag hardware, but some of the good stuff that you can use is definitely there, and the price is really good. Okay, so we have these. We're going to need grommets. So the original bag calls for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 7 grommets. I'm not going to use 7 grommets. So the way I did this bag, I just have the 2 grommets on the side, on each side. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that again. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm only going to do 2. So I'm thinking, I don't know. I think I'm going to just do 2, 1 on each side, but we'll see. But I have this little grommet kit that I got. I think it comes with like 8 grommets for 2 different sizes. And it was, I think, $10, $12. And if you plan to do anything using grommets, it's a really easy kit to use. And it's, you know, $10, $12, not a big deal. And you will always need it. So we're going to use grommets. And again, you can use whatever size grommet you want. Now, with that, you have to keep in mind that the leather that you're going to slide through the grommet needs to be smaller than the grommet size, which honestly shouldn't be too big of an issue because, let's see, I have 1/2-inch grommets, which are these, which is really big. And then you have 3/8 of an inch for these, which in my opinion is really big too. So that's kind of like the standard size. So just make sure, you know, you select the proper size grommets. So what you want to do, and this is what I'm doing, of course, I don't think the actual pattern, let me see what it calls for. So the actual pattern, it looks like through the grommets, there's like a chain or something through here, but I'm not sure how. It looks like there's a chain through here, but I'm not sure what everyone else used. But I just simply use just some straps, excuse me, just some straps of leather that I cut. Oh, can't see it. Just some little straps of leather, and I cut 2 that are pretty long. You just play it by ear. Just cut them as long as you can, and as long as the leather will allow you to cut them, and then you can always trim them down later, so that's not an issue. And I just have a few pieces that I cut out, so I'm going to use them or 1 or 2 of them. I haven't decided yet. Let's see, what else do we need? So this is a leather hole punch. I've had this for several years. It's really good. It's really easy to punch holes through the leather. Now, you're only going to get but so large, if you can see here. So keep that in mind too. You can get it all for like $2 or $3. This works just as well. You're going to need an X-Acto knife, especially when you're cutting leather. It cuts it a lot more smoother. I really love the X-Acto knife for this. So from using leather and you want to like clamp down on it, if you have a crease and you want to like really, because you can't iron leather, of course, but you can kind of like press it down to give it some type of, you know, like crease to it. I can't remember how much I paid for these, but yeah, these come in handy. You don't need it. You can simply throw a book, like a heavy book on it, let it sit there for a minute or two, and it'll be just as good. What do we have? You're going to need clips, of course, because you can't pin the leather. You're going to need a hammer. I'm using an edge coat. So what edge coat does is, if you see like on bags and bags that you've purchased, the ends are just really clean. They look really, even when you look at this here, and that is because they've been burnished and then the edge coat is placed on. So edge coat is going to give it kind of like a sheen on the edges of leather after they're burnished. I use edge coat for everything. And I don't have green edge coat. So I am going to be using brown edge coat. And I tested it out and I'm okay with it. I may use black too. I do have black. But we'll see. But I'm okay with the brown, to be completely honest. But edge coat comes in like tons of different colors. I just simply don't have it. So you're going to need that. You're going to need, let's see, of course, a straight edge ruler. If you don't have an X-Acto knife, I would definitely make sure you have a rotary. I have this other little kit that helps, especially with thicker leather. So with this leather, making the holes in the leather was a lot more challenging because I needed the holes to be larger. And when you have a softer leather, like this one is a much softer leather, it's a lot easier. But this little kit here, which came from Tandy Leather, it's called a Maxi Punch Set. And it has different little pieces that are interchangeable in different sizes. So you can simply put the proper size on. Here, take a hammer and it'll put a hole in here. And the good thing about it is that it makes like a really nice circular hole. But again, you have to have the proper leather. If you're using a soft leather, it's not going to do it. It's pretty much just going to like sink into the leather. But I think it's a good tool to have. So like I said before, I'm still on the fence in terms of what I'm going to do with the hardware and how I'm going to pretty much decorate the bag. So I'm also thinking about like maybe doing like a flap across the front. If I do that, I'll need these, which are the little closures. And they're like typically inside of a bag, so you won't be able to see it. It'll be closed like this magnetic closure. And you can close it like this, and there will be nothing here, nothing on that side. So again, I'm not sure yet if I'm going to use that, but we'll see. So if you plan to dye your leather, which is also an option, if you have like a raw leather, you can dye it. But even when I use my edge coat, you can use these wool daubers, which are really good. And you can get like a bag of 50 on Amazon for like $6. But I love these. If you don't have these, just use a Q-tip. You can use a Q-tip to go along the edge. I also have this, which is a tool that is specifically for like edges. So with the edge coat, it gets a really nice finish on it. I think this one came from I think it came from Tandy Leather. It's probably like $12 or $15, something like that. But again, a lot of these tools, you'll just be able to use them over and over and over again. Okay, so one thing that's really important, and a tool that's really important if you want to get a really good finish on your leather. Again, I won't be able to get this type of finish on this leather because it's significantly softer, but a burnishing machine, and I'll show you. So when you're dealing with a harder leather, the edge, you want a nice, slick, smooth edge so that you can edge coat it. You can only do that if it's burnished. So it's basically slicking the side of the leather. This machine also has where if you need to sand it down, you need to get it extra straight, you need to clean it up, you have that option. But I love this. It cuts down burnishing time like you would not imagine. But these machines are around $200, $250. If you don't want to go that route, this is what I used to use. It is going to take more time, but this does the job as well. And I'll show you what you need with this. Okay, so this here is called gum, what is it? Triganth or something? I don't know. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But it's this little gum stuff that you put on the sides of leather. You put it on the side of the leather, and then you do like this. So it's essentially doing the same thing this machine does, but this machine is going to do it significantly faster. But you can take it, and they come in different sizes. I used this for a very long time. So that's an option. And it's probably like, it's less than $10. Now, if you don't have any of this, use water. Water, honestly, it doesn't work quite as well, but there's not this huge difference that if you have this against water. So you just, do this all the way down on both sides. It's a lot of work. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but this is an option. So you're also going to need a glue, some type of glue. I love this glue here. It dries pretty quickly. And this came from Tandy. It is a water-based contact adhesive. It is great for all type of leather applications. Also, if you have the leather double-sided tape, I just ran out of that tape yesterday. I ordered some new one. It hasn't arrived yet, but a double-sided tape I think is great too. A double-sided leather tape, because that does make a difference. And I think, we have the zipper. You're going to need a zipper for this. And also, I didn't address, because I definitely am going to make a handle for this bag. And I have a Chloe bag that's similar to this. And so I like the length of that strap that's on there. And so I'm going to make this the strap. But what I'm going to do, because it is kind of, like I said, a really soft leather, I'm going to place this other one, which was the leather used here. I'm going to place this between both pieces. And then I'm going to stitch on both sides. I'm going to burnish and then use the edge coat, because I need this to be able to give me, some type of stability. So yeah, that should work out fine. And then it's not going to be this wide, of course, because after you stitch the sides, you're going to then kind of like cut off like some of the seam allowance, some of the excess seam allowance, which will make it a lot smaller. But I think that is it. I have one more, and of course this is totally optional. If you want to kind of do something a little extra special with your bags, I have this here, which is a way to basically, not embroider, it's a stamping machine. So it's going to give kind of like that very finished look. But of course, in order to do that and to use this, you're going to need let me see if I have mine. Some type of like embossing tool. So I have one here that has like a logo on it. And so most brands, they have it to where they simply kind of put their branding stamp on all of their bags. And you can also use it with like the foil kit. Let's see if I have it. Yeah, so there's a foil kit that even when you see a lot of bags, it's either going to have like the gold or the silver that is like embossed into their piece. And it's typically on leather. Of course, you don't need this, but it's just kind of nice to have. So now another thing that I do recommend you get if you're going to be using and making stuff with leather is a leather gauge. And this is probably like, I don't know, $10-12, but it also shows you like the thickness of the leather that you're going to be using. I find this very helpful, especially when I'm trying to get different or put different hardware on the bag. So sometimes when you purchase things like this, they're going to say this is for a 7mm bag or 7mm leather. And if you don't know how thick your leather is, you're just going to be kind of confused. So these are like $10-12, but you simply, if you have your leather, you put it in here and it tells you how thick the leather is. So I love this thing. I use it very often when I am sewing with leather. And then finally, let's talk about the machine, because of course that is always the question. Can you do this with just a regular home sewing machine? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes, you can. Without a doubt, you can. But it's going to depend on the type of leather that you're using. So this leather that I'm using here is very soft, and with no problem will go through a machine like with ease. Now this one will not. So you will not be able to, like, I won't be able to use my Bernina. Wasn't able to use my Bernina with this machine. So you are going to need, if you're using a thicker leather, you are going to need a machine that can accommodate that. And I'll show you the machine that I use when it comes to leather. But I do have another option. So there is a machine, and I will link it. I actually purchased it, so it'll be here hopefully tomorrow. But it is a hand cranked leather sewing machine. Yes, hand cranked. So you know what that means. You are literally going to have to turn like a lever, and then it'll move the machine. It will move the needle. I personally would love that for certain things. So I'll show you my Cellrite and the reason why it's so difficult to sew certain things under it, because it has like this large base around it. So if you're trying to get in really small spaces, I have to actually hand stitch that. And so this other piece of equipment that I purchased will hopefully kind of alleviate that headache. But yes, so anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is the Cellrite. So this is the heavy duty. You hear it? It sounds heavy duty. This is the one that I use strictly for leather. And this one is my Old Faithful here for the a leather, but like a much softer leather. You can get away with this one. But trying to squeeze anything with some thickness or like some rigidness under here will never take. This one, it will. But like I said before, if I'm trying to, like, say for instance, you even have like a shirt. You know how a sleeve of a shirt, you can take this off and just kind of run it through here. You don't have that option here. So when you're dealing with bags and things that are like with smaller diameter, it's very difficult to sew with this machine. So hopefully the one that I just purchased will solve that issue. But anyway, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the actual bag. So this is the front and the back. So we're going to start by placing the stabilizer. We're going to go ahead and put a little glue on here. And I really like this glue a lot, actually. It comes off really easily if you get it all over your hands or over something, but it works really well, especially with leather. So you want to kind of cover this nicely. I also think the price of, honestly, the price of everything has gone up. But I feel like the price of this has like doubled. And then if you go online and look at some other options, the price is all comparable. So I ended up sticking with this one. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me stick it in there. And you're just going to place this right here, right in the center. And I'm going to just stick something on here like a book, just to flatten it, because it's the ends of this around it. The ends of this is a big rounded, and it's really thick, so I'm just going to set this on here for a minute. Just take this off. Yeah, babe. And we're gonna flip it over. Okay, so we have this attached. Now what you want to do is this other piece that we have, you want to place this, kind of make sure you have it centered. And I'm just going to take a little bit of glue, not much, but and this is just to kind of place it because we're going to stitch this. Let's see, make sure this is even. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way around. Okay, so we have the bottom attached. Now what we want to do is go ahead and install the feet. So I'm going to do it on the shorter ends. Of course, you can put it anywhere you want, but this is 6 inches. So I'm going to go in. There's a pin. I'm going to mark this at the 1 inch, and then again at the 3-inch mark. And then here we're going to go in 1 inch. And that would make this evenly spaced out. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. I probably shouldn't have used this pin, but whatever. Okay, so we're gonna go again 1 inch. 3 inches, and then 1 inch. Okay. All right. Okay. So you just want to make sure that you have them evenly spaced and you have them even from the ends. You can use whatever dimensions you want, but I'm using 5/8 from the end and then 1 inch from the 2 ends and then meet in the middle here at 3 inches. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and install the feet. Okay, so that was probably like the most strenuous part of what you'll be doing with this. It's just, and it's this leather. Actually, the leather that's thicker was a lot easier to get through. But this is almost like spongy, which makes it a lot more difficult to penetrate. Okay, so I'm going to come right back. I'm going to screw these in really tightly. So they are screwed in, and you could leave it like this and it would be fine. But I'm going to take these tools here. And so for the ones that aren't like extremely tight, you're going to need something to grab onto it. Because these are very flush, you have no way to grab it to ensure you're tightening it all the way. So you just want to kind of, for the ones that are not extremely tight, you want to just go through and do that. Okay, so we have the bottom constructed. Now let's go ahead and just put this to the side for a minute, and let's grab the lining. Okay, so as a reminder, the lining does have 2 sides. Just so I know what side we're working on. Okay, so let's just go ahead and pop in the zipper. So normally what you would do is kind of just finish this, the zipper like you would like a welt zipper. But I'm not. This is like a really clean finish already. So I'm going to just do like a zigzag stitch all the way around and just put the zipper in that way. But go ahead and put your zipper in however you want to put it in. Okay, so we have the zipper installed. Now what you want to do is you want to flip this over. let me trim these. And then you want to put which essentially is going to be the jacket to the zipper. You want to just place it over and you want to stitch it all the way around. Okay, so we have the zipper pouch jacket stitched. Now we're just going to go ahead and set this to the side. Okay, so this is going to be the front of the bag as opposed to this. It's leather, so there's an imperfection. So I'm going to make this part, the front of the bag. And of course, this part is completely optional. So it's going to be 7.5. But I'm just going to go ahead and throw in really quickly the embossing. This part done. I'm going to turn this off and set this to the side. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to, there's two, if you remember, there's 2 levels that we're going to include here. So it's going to have a wool and then it's going to have another leather piece at the top. So let's go ahead and we're going to attach these. So I already went and did the edge coating on here. Again, remember, if it's a really soft leather, you're not going to be able to use the burnishing, but you can use the edge coat, which I've already done, and it's dried already. So you want to make sure you do that. And if you have the thicker leather, I would definitely recommend doing the burnishing. So what I'm going to do now, this is the right side. So I'm not going to stitch this in a way that's providing like this. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is just kind of place it on top here. And I'm going to do a double stitch right across the front here. So there's about, let's see how far down. It is about a 1/4 of an inch maybe. It's about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to bring it down just a little more. And of course, this is like flexible, and I didn't cut it on the grain line, so it's kind of a little wider than I want it to be, but that's not an issue because after I stitch this on, I'm just going to shore this up. But I'm going to wait until I do the other side as well. So we're going to place the leather on top, make sure it's even, and then do a double stitch across the front. We're going to do the same thing for the other side as well. Okay, so we have the wool portion attached, and I actually ended up doing 3 rows of stitches instead of 2. Yeah, because I felt like because this wool or this leather is so soft that it needed kind of like just a little extra row up here to make sure that this part here doesn't like flop over, and it just looks neater. All right, so let's take the other row, which is this one here, and we're going to place it up here. But this one, we are going to stitch like a regular seam. Okay, so once you go ahead and stitch this, then you're going to top stitch. But I'll go ahead and do this part and come back and show you where you're going to top stitch. So do this to the front as well as the back. Okay, so we have the top connected. Now what we want to do is we want to take and top stitch along this line, and we want to do that on both sides. Okay, so we have both sides top stitched. You can see this here. And this is really neat, but I really prefer the look of like the more structured leather. But this is really easy to work with. But anyway, so I am going to just kind of like put on the side of the logo here, I'm just going to put these just because I think it makes it more interesting. It brings some dimension to it. And I just like the way it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll be right back and we're going to put in the lining. Okay, so I have just this little, just some hardware installed. Now what I'm going to do is take the lining. So there's two lining pieces. So with right sides together, you're going to stitch right across the top. And you're going to do that on both sides. I have my little clips. So, and remember, you're going to do this part here is just going to be left loose. So we're only stitching right across the top here. And so for the other side, we'll do the same thing. Right sides together, right across the top. Okay, so we have the sides stitched up, and normally you would go ahead and stitch the bottom of the lining, but I am going to put in some hardware on the side, so I'm going to leave this open for now. So what you're going to do now is the location where it's stabilized, you want to just take this. This is what it's going to look like, the opening. You just want to take this like this. And you're going to stitch right across. Make sure you reinforce the sides. You're going to do that on both sides. Okay, so we have the sides and the bottom stitched. Now what you want to do is go ahead and turn it right side out. Okay, so I'm going to leave the lining out for now because I am going to add hardware. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add hardware to the sides. So I'm going to add a couple of the D-rings and kind of like this tab. The same thing I did with the other bag. I'm going to make it the same way. So this is 1 inch wide, and I'm going to end up cutting it, but this is like, it's going to be around 3.5 to 4 inches long after I cut it. But I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to add the D-rings like this. So I'm going to put it here. We're going to take this up a bit. And I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to stitch right here, and then I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to put this on. So I'm going to stitch it and then secure it like such. I'm thinking, should I secure it with this or no? I'm debating. You know, I'm not sure. So I may just stitch it. I'm definitely going to stitch it here, but I may just stitch it here as opposed to securing it with one of these. So either way, it's going to be secured here. And then I'm going to add another D-ring. So I'm going to slide this on and then stitch it across the top here. And so what's going to happen is the strap is going to come from this here. Once we do the strap, it's going to be stitched across this. So I think, yeah, I think that'll work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it for both sides. Now, this is the time to do whatever type of hardware you want on the bag. So before we make sure we kind of like close the lining up, we need to put all the hardware on at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have the lining attached on both sides, which is making this extremely long. I'm going to spread this out so that you can kind of see. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the sides. So with right sides together, here's the bottom. Which would make the lining on this side. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to, this is really hard, so you're going to have to kind of flex it a bit. Let me grab my clips. Okay, so what you want to do is, you may or may not need to do this, but because this is so hard, I need to kind of bend it a bit. So you want to clip the sides all the way down. Making sure when you get to this part that you are lining up the sides. As well as this one here. And you want to go all the way up to the lining. Make sure you line this up as well. And all the way up to here. So we're going to do this on both sides. All right, so we're just going to do the sides. So this part here, we're leaving this open. And on the other end, this part here, we're leaving this open. So we're just doing the sides only. We're going to do this on both sides. Go ahead and stitch. And then with your finger, try to press the seam as flat as you can. It'll be a lot easier, of course, on this side if you kind of mixed the fabric up, if you're using leather as well as, you know, just a regular fabric. If you're using a regular fabric across the board, it makes the seam pressing a lot easier. So just go ahead and do that. Do the same thing on the other side and then go ahead and press. Okay, so I have the hardware installed on the sides. And this is just to show you kind of like how I did it. I gotta cut these strings. But I did this, and then I put, hey, out of there. I put this here, and then I'm going to attach the strap to this. But so now what I'm going to do is, because I am going to do the drawstring part, so I'm going to put a grommet here, 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 and here. And I'm only going, so when you put the grommets in, you only want to do just this one layer, because then we're going to fold this over and kind of do the, like, encase this. And that's going to create like the casing for the drawstring. So I'm going to go ahead and install 4 grommets. Okay, so we have the grommets installed. Now what we want to do is turn this inside out again. And so now we want to close this side here up. So we're going to stitch this close. But what you want to do is you want to leave some open so that you can turn it right side out. So it's going to depend, how much you're going to leave open is going to depend on like the thickness of your fabric and your leather. Because I have this base, I am going to have to leave quite a bit open because it's going to be difficult to turn it right side out. But let's go ahead and do that. And then we're just go ahead and take it a step further. So once you stitch however much you want to leave open, I'm only going to do like honestly, like just these ends. So, and I'm going to do the ends so that I can go ahead and do the sides as well. So I'm going to stitch just the ends. And then once you do that, just like we did the actual leather, then you want to go ahead and close the sides up. And then we'll turn it, put the lining to the inside and turn the other part right side out. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we have the lining sides done, and we have this portion here open, and this is what I use to turn it right side out. So what I'm going to do when it's all said and done and we tuck this in is you're going to have to kind of hand stitch it. You can kind of just like tuck this in and just kind of do a hand stitch. It's going to be in the bag. So it's your decision to make it as neat or not as neat as you want. But this part is going to be inside. So let's go ahead. I guess we could go ahead and stitch this up. I'm going to do mine after. So let's put this in. So now what we're going to do is we have to make the casing for the little drawstrings. So we're going to make sure this is turned over like right here on the fold. I'm actually going to get a couple of clips just so that it won't roll as I'm stitching it. All right, so let me turn this all the way over. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to go, and so you have an option. If you're just using a regular fabric, you can stitch directly on top of this existing stitch, but I'm not going to do that because of this type of leather. It tends to split it a bit if you do too many stitches on top of the other stitch. So I'm just going to kind of stitch right in this little ditch right here, and I'm going to go all the way around. So we're going to do that, and it's going to create the casing. And again, you're going to go through this outside fabric as well as the lining fabric. So stitch through both of them. Okay, so we have the casing done. Now what you want to do is, if you haven't already done so, the strips that I mentioned earlier, you want to feed the strips through. So I typically just do the 2. So we're going to feed we're going to feed 1, and we're just going to take it in the 1 grommet, take it around and pull it out the other way. And then we're going to do the same thing to 1, take it through this grommet and feed it out the other way. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll be right back. Okay, so we have the drawstrings inserted. Now what you want to do, which is the last part, is do the straps. So I'm just using this one because these are so like there's too much movement in them, and I want them just a little bit stiffer. So I'm going to place this in the middle. So, and again, you can kind of cut this out however you want in terms of the length. I know kind of where I want mine to sit, but if you want yours longer, if you want to use this as a crossbody, kind of like a bulkier crossbody or a smaller bag, just adjust the straps. You can also make the straps adjustable. I didn't have enough leather to do that with. I'm like scraping by barely. So this is what I'm going to do. You want to take both of these, put them together, and stitch. Just make sure you use the clips so that it's nice and even. You want to stitch down this side and then again over here. So all the way around, and then trim really close to the stitch without going through the stitch. And you have to be really careful when you do trim it. You want to use some type of straight edge when you trim. So once you get the stitching in, you want to place the straight edge so that you're either using your X-Acto knife or your rotary cutter and cut a nice clean line. So you want to do that for both sides. Okay, so we have the strap done. We have it stitched and trimmed. So now you can, there's a couple ways you can finish it, depending, of course, on what type of leather you have. So because I have a mix of leathers, I'm just going to go ahead and edge coat this. I'm going to edge coat it, let it dry, and then once you let it dry, you want to take in this first loop, you want to send it through here, and you have a couple of options of how you can attach this. Of course, you can just stitch this across depending on what type of machine you're using, or you can also use one of the screws here. So once you do that, you are done. Let's see, I'm just going to go ahead and put this through here. And there you have it. Oh, one thing I didn't mention. So remember, we have this opening here. After I edge coat this and stitch this on, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick like hand stitch in here. And then that is it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know.